I think we're gonna start rolling, and we will be disabling the lobby and bringing people in so that people can join, and then we'll manage we'll manage their type of participation on from our side, and you can carry on, Duncan. We will not need to worry about that. So. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is André Oliveira, and I would like to welcome you to our next National Association Development Series webinar. It's with great pleasure that we welcome Duncan Bennett once again. We remind you that Duncan was here with us in April when he was delivering a webinar on the facilities life cycle. And today we are looking to hear him talk about multi-sports facilities, which is a topic that has growing in importance, not just for sport in general, but particularly to hockey development worldwide, not just especially in grassroots levels. We hope you can make the best of today. We will be asking your participation quite a lot. We will be putting some questions in the chat, and we also welcome your comments and your questions to Duncan. Feel free to write in the chat your questions at any time. We will pick them up and we will choose the right moment to get them to Duncan so that he can try to provide you with the best answer. Just so you know what to expect from today in terms of how we manage this session, your video and your microphone will be muted. But the chat is available. So if you want to ask a question or make a comment, just put it in the chat. And when it's your time to, when it's the right time for that question or for that comment to be put up to Duncan, we will unmute your camera and your microphone, and we would like you to ask that question or make that comment. So again, you will be muted on your video and on your microphone, but when it's the right time, we will unmute you, and we would love that you will be the one asking that question or making that comment. Second information, this webinar will be recorded, same as all previous webinars we've done, and the recording will be made available at the FIH Academy YouTube page. So if you want to watch one of our previous NA series webinars, you can go to our YouTube page, FIH Academy YouTube page, and one of the playlists is precisely the NA Development Series webinars. And this is all for me. Without further ado, I will hand it to Duncan. Duncan, thank you very much once again for joining us here. The floor is yours, and hope you enjoy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Andre. Thanks, everybody, for attending. The purpose of today's presentation is to provoke a bit of debate, to pass on examples of best practice. It's certainly not a case that we're trying to convince you of something that might not work in your area. What we're hopefully going to demonstrate is how multi-sport hockey facilities here in the UK are working, and that the way they work might translate to your national association, to your country, and may provoke some ideas and inspiration for facilities in your area. And the focus that we're the presentation focus, I should say, is on how multi-sport facilities can provide sustainable solutions in all different types of scenarios. So again, we're going to pass on some of the best practice and examples that we've done in recent years here at NottsSports, in order for you to see what we're doing and to hopefully take away and give you inspiration for your own facility development plans in your territory. Andre's given a bit of an overview of what the aim of the day is today. The presentation should last around 45 minutes-ish, something like that, so plenty of time for your comments and questions. And it'd be great if we could make it as interactive as possible. So as Andre said, please use the chat to submit comments, questions, feedback, and then I'll do my best to engage and discuss with you your specific points. The overall content and aim of the presentation is to, firstly, just do a very quick recap of the previous webinar we've ran for the FIH this year. Like Andre said, it was in April on sustainability, because sustainability links directly into where and how multi-use facilities are used. We'll give you some of those case studies, examples of best practice that we've delivered here in recent years, in order for you to have ideas and hopefully provoke questions for you, so we can give you ideas and answers for you to take away. So it's a fairly straightforward aim for today: get you engaged, get you involved, and hopefully provoke some ideas and debate within the webinar itself. So I said we'd do a quick overview of what we were discussing in April, and that was how sustainability fits into a facility development plan, whether it's an individual facility or whether it's a program of facilities in your territory. And sustainability is multifaceted. It's got lots of different elements to it. It's not straightforward. And what we tried to do in April was give you an overview of how it fits into the design and development of hockey pitches. And effectively, we were saying that within the project life cycle, sustainability starts and flows through right from inception, right from the moment you have your idea, I would like to develop a hockey facility or resurface an existing pitch. It's right the way through that, because without that view at the start of the project, you can't build it into your initial thinking, your feasibility stage, ultimately then feeding into the design, through to construction and management, and then even into the pitch resurface element. So your choice right at the start of the project will inform how you design the project, how it's built, and ultimately 10 years later, 12 years later, whenever it may be, how the pitch can be resurfaced. That webinar is on the YouTube channel, as Andre said, so you can go back and look at it in full. But one of the key slides that we got feedback on was basically provoking again a bit of questions and answers within the webinar. And this was the page that we were saying we would recommend that you do in terms of asking questions of yourselves in terms of developing plans, and also anybody involved in the design element of the project. So what we try to do at NottsSports is deliver sustainable solutions on each and every project we deliver. In order for us to do that, we ask questions of ourselves and the customers to understand what options are available, because we can come up with some innovation and sustainable design solutions, but if they aren't going to be welcomed by the customer, then ultimately we need to know the answers early so we can develop plans to suit not just us and what we think, but also what the end user wants to achieve. So those questions were: what are the latest developments? Pretty obvious, really. Challenge your hockey pitch builders in your territory, your designers, contacts such as Andre and myself and Alistair Cox at the FIH about what are the developments in sustainable design and solutions within the synthetic turf industry. Who else has done and used those facilities in developments and products? How can we learn from those early adopters? Has things gone well? Are there limitations to what those design solutions and products can achieve? Are there recycled materials we can include in our designs? Maybe that's not just the surface, maybe there's shot pads, there's fencing, lighting. What recycled content can we include rather than just using new products over again? What materials are recyclable? Maybe that's physically recycling them so they can be sustainably disposed at end of life, or it could be that we're going to reuse them within the pitch through 2 or 3 carpet cycles. So the top surface will always wear. Can we use a shot pad that will last 2 or 3 cycles of synthetic turf, hockey turf? Are there design solutions that can reduce the impact on the environment? Do we have to keep digging holes in the ground, filling them with new stone dug from parts of Europe and elsewhere where you guys are? Is there better solutions that lower the impact on the natural environment, reduce the amount of carbon dioxide, CO2 emissions through the construction process and manufacturing process? Which products bring long-standing performance warranties? I've mentioned about life cycles. And what ways can we future-proof the design now so that when, it might not be you, it might be somebody inheriting your role in the National Association in 10, 12, 15 years time, what can I do now to help that person or myself in that 10, 15 year time frame plan for the resurface in that time frame period? So we're often working on projects that have life cost plans at least 10 years, if not 20 or 30 years. So customers we work with can see, right, the project cost now, today in 2022, 2023 is this much. The resurface renewing cost in 10, 12, 15 years time is going to be around this much. And then even in 30 years time, these elements of the pitch are still going to be in a performance level that allow it to be retained. And so we can start to make sustainable business plans and financial plans, not just today, but all the way through the life of the pitch within reason. And then the final point there, who are the people that we need to contact to understand new standards and recommendations as they're published, so any new products that come on the market can be benchmarked, tested, and we know that they're approved for use in hockey development and hockey facilities. And I think I just saw Alistair Cox join us at the FIH. He's an ideal point of contact for exactly that, because Alistair writes a lot of the standards that companies like NottsSports and facility development plans are based against in terms of how does my pitch meet the hockey standard that I'm trying to deliver. So if you can consider all these different questions, you'll get some really informed answers that allow you to make informed decisions moving forward. And in terms of how that links to sustainable multi-use facilities, that project cycle right at the start, I'll go back a couple of slides, is key, because when we go and visit customers here in our market in mainland UK, the first question we ask is, what is it you're trying to deliver here? Are you trying to deliver a standalone bespoke hockey pitch that supports hockey and everything and that's it? Or are we looking to deliver a project where hockey's the key sport, but other sports are going to benefit from the facility as well? So the next section of the presentation is to go into where and how multi-use hockey facilities are used. So there are two types of multi-use facilities, broadly speaking. There are full-sized multi-sport pitch projects. So it's a give or take a metre or two, 100 metres by 60 metres, full-sized hockey markings in there, but that are also designed and built so that you can play other sports within that pitch footprint. And thinking back to that set of questions about sustainability, very often, even in a popular hockey playing area, a hockey pitch standalone still requires other sports to use the facility in order to create a sustainable business case. So multi-sport, full-size multi-sport pitch developments and projects are often developed within schools here in the UK where there isn't space for a hockey pitch, a soccer pitch, maybe a rugby pitch here in the UK. They need to develop a facility that maximises the space that they have and that can provide good, high quality hockey performance, but also offer the local community and clubs football performance or other sports. Within a school environment, which is where we often work here in the UK, it also needs to meet a wider curriculum requirement. So within the school, hockey is a key sport, but they also need to be able to teach tennis or netball, which is a sport popular in England, lacrosse, soccer, bat and ball games, maybe baseball, rounders, or cricket, again, a popular sport here in the UK. Also, being in a country where it's currently raining, in the summer, athletics is a key priority for a lot of school customers, and it still rains in the summer here, unfortunately for us. So running on natural grass can be slippy. So could the artificial turf pitch support a level of athletics provision as well? And all these considerations are made early in the development of a project for the reasons we've just touched on the earlier slides. And what it also does is it encourages, pretty obviously, a wider variety of sports to be played, and therefore a wider participation in sport. Now that can lead to increased amount of people playing on the pitch, which should increase the viability of the project for any stakeholder. And by that I mean hockey is a popular sport in many territories, but would a local municipal authority or a council or a school invest in a dedicated hockey pitch just for hockey? Maybe. But if we explain to them that actually it's a hockey pitch that can also provide your local community with a soccer training facility, also for netball or tennis or athletics, then you're going to get more stakeholder engagement. There's going to be more benefit to a wider range of people, which should encourage more people onto the pitch. And in that scenario, we see time and time again people seeing hockey being played as they arrive to play tennis or soccer, and that encourages them to consider giving hockey another try if they've played it before, or a way of introducing hockey to them if they've not seen it themselves. So if you can get more people onto your facility whilst hockey's being played, or at this time around where hockey's played, it should give the sport a wider exposure. Again, we see that a lot in England. And by opening the pitch and the facility up to a variety of sports, it also creates a wider business plan, because where you've got floodlights and you can use the facility in an evening and a weekend, more often than not, those sports that come and use it will pay for the right to access the facility. So it covers the cost of running it and opening it. And if you've got more sports on the facility, usually you can get more income from commercial lettings, as we would call it here, in the evenings and weekends. So it's a way of providing sustainability within pitch design for an area where either hockey can't deliver the amount of demand as a own sport, and so you want a hockey pitch, but your club or your association only needs to use it 3 days a week or whatever it may be. So by opening a multi-use facility where hockey's the priority, hockey can use it those 3 days a week, other sports can benefit, and it becomes a much more sustainable facility and design and plan. So I mentioned there's different types of facilities, and you'll be glad to know the next set of slides sort of illustrates what we've done and how, so that the visuals might make it more obvious. But we also do smaller, what we call multi-use games facilities. The FIH have a small-sided version of hockey called Hockey Fives. So these are Hockey Fives type pitch sizes, 53 metres by 36 metres, around that sort of size, or smaller or bigger, depending on what the customer has in terms of space or budget, ultimately. So these smaller facilities are used in areas where there is a demand for hockey, but perhaps only from a small amount of users and players. So to justify a full-size pitch at large investment isn't realistic. So could we use a smaller pitch, which by being smaller is more cost effective, it's cheaper, to do our training and coaching on there. So this becomes an ideal gateway for clubs and users to get hockey played on a good quality hockey surface, but on a smaller scale, so we can introduce more people to the sport. That hopefully leads to a pathway where a full-size pitch is needed, because we've grown the sport and participation over a period of time to needing a full-size pitch in years to come. So again, we've talked to a lot of customers here at home in England and Scotland and Wales who just want to go straight into doing a full-size pitch, but it's not realistic to expect that to be paid for unless you can demonstrate that it's required. So we'll build a smaller facility to create a pathway for participation and growth, leading to a full-size pitch in years to come. And again, this all goes back to that sustainability cycle of assessing need at that inception stage, so we can understand what the demand is, and companies like ourselves can make informed advice, and you can make informed decisions as to what actually the most realistic path is. The other thing that we do a lot here, which is sometimes sort of overlooked, is that we have an amount of customers, whether they be municipal authorities, councils, schools, or colleges, universities, who have a lot of old asphalt, what we call tarmac courts, which are probably originally for tennis, certainly, maybe basketball, or I mentioned a sport called netball, which some of you might be familiar with. Many of you probably aren't, but that's also an English sport that's played on an asphalt type surface. Over time, these things get sort of left, and they aren't maintained particularly well, and they then become outdated and not really used. So what we're doing a lot of each year here is taking those maybe two or three tennis courts in a bank and converting them to a modern multi-use hockey training facility. So we're still talking smaller pitch sizes than a full-size competitive hockey pitch, but we're looking at converting an older type asphalt surface to something that is much better for hockey and that you can still do all those different sports on. So I mentioned that tarmac courts were usually built in the 80s, maybe 90s for tennis, where you can still play a good level of tennis on a multi-use hockey turf surface, what we call here in the UK a Gen 2 system, and that has a FIH multi-sport category attached to it as well. So we can convert these tarmac courts, improve them for a wide range of sports, and for us on this webinar, hockey is the centre of that design consideration. So we can upgrade, improve, create sustainability because we're improving an existing facility. We're not building new, and we're not leaving something that's not being used for another 5-10 years. And again, that is usually a much cheaper way of developing a hockey facility than building new, because we've got an asphalt base to overlay if it's in a condition that's suitable. And on smaller facilities as well, there are base innovations coming through. So instead of having to build a brand new base on what might have been a previous earth or grass area, there are base innovations coming through, and some of the next slides will illustrate some of those. So we've developed a base solution that gets rid of the need for an asphalt layer, and on smaller areas that can save quite a significant amount of money here in Europe, because the cost of asphalt and stone is going sky high. It's very expensive. So if we can get rid of those layers without compromising on long-term performance, then there's a cost saving, there's a sustainability benefit, and ultimately a better way of developing a project where costs aren't there to build asphalt over and over again on different sites. So where you are in your national association and your part of the world, the options in terms of base innovations might be fully available to you, or they might be coming onto the market in the years to come. But the good news for everybody on the call is that because of the drive towards sustainability, people are now looking at ways of doing things differently, and hopefully that firstly achieves some of the sustainability goals that we're looking to deliver as an industry, and also provides you with better options or a broader range of options, some of which will also come with cost savings as well. And again, I'll illustrate some of those in the slides to come as we move through. So that's the sort of written part of the presentation, trying to give you some ideas of where we're doing projects with multi-use at its heart, where hockey is still the key sport, but other sports benefit. The next set of slides are indeed to show you how we design and what we've delivered. So this is an example of some layouts that we've done for customers initially, just to illustrate on a full-sized hockey pitch what you can fit on. So that, I don't know if you can see my mouse, I'm hoping so, but the top left corner there, markings, is simply a hockey pitch in white with blue into hockey, cross pitch hockey for junior play and practice and coaching across it. So that's your standard hockey pitch design. The next pitch with the red crossfield markings on it on the upper right, that shows how you can fit a full-sized hockey pitch with a full-sized football pitch within it, and then still got the cross pitch in blue hockey, but also five-a-side pitches in the thirds. So those red markings divide the pitch into thirds, and then you can play five-a-side, seven-a-side football across there for evening coaching practice. And then the bottom left pitch, which is quite full, illustrates how you can get 6 netball courts and 9, I think it is, might be 12 actually, tennis courts on there. So again, when we're talking to schools who want to do hockey for their children, the teachers do, they want to teach hockey, but they also want to teach tennis, and they want to teach netball, which is this sport I keep mentioning that's popular in England. We can show how you can put a lot of courts on that hockey pitch footprint so that they have flexibility as teachers to teach different sports at different times of the year. And on these designs, you can use dividing nets and curtains so that we could split the pitch into thirds or halves. So one half of the pitch could be used for tennis and one half of the pitch could be used still for hockey, or you can pull the dividing net back and have flexibility throughout the day and the evening as to what you offer. So I'll explain how line markings work in a minute, but this illustrates how many tennis courts, for example, you can fit on there, which comes quite often as a surprise to customers that we engage with. So hopefully it's something you either haven't seen or if you have seen it before, it's a reminder. And then the bottom right corner again comes as a surprise to a lot of customers we engage with, because within a hockey pitch footprint, you can also fit a 200-meter running track in there. So I mentioned earlier that a lot of schools will play hockey through the winter here in Europe. In the summer, when the hockey season's ended, what else can we do on it? Well, we could do tennis, which is a summer sport, and we can do athletics within a 200-meter track. And again, we can manipulate the design of the pitch, so we could introduce gates and introduce sprint straights along the top. So we could have a 100-meter sprint straight in a pitch design as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can apply markings for different sports. This is an illustration of what you can fit effectively. And here's some examples of schools that we've done very recently. This was just this summer, and this is an example of a school that had a tarmac court footprint, 2 tennis court size, so a bank of asphalt tarmac tennis courts that they were using as a playground. They were using for tennis. They had football on there. Hockey was played on the tarmac as well, albeit it wasn't particularly good quality. So what the school wanted to do was still offer that range of sports, but on a surface system that was much better for hockey, because that's where they saw participation within their school. So we took the existing asphalt, we had to do a few small repairs to it, and then we've simply laid that a new shot pad and a new hockey turf over the top of it, and that complies with the standards for hockey critically, and also tennis and netball, and they can also continue to use it as a playground if they wanted to, but also for football coaching practice. So this is a 36 meter by 36, so it's quite square. It's not a perfect rectangle, but for the school here that have children up to the age of 12, I believe, What they wanted was just a way of introducing children to a good level of hockey so that they can get engagement and also offer that wider range of sports for their teaching and lessons. It was a similar idea at this school in Wales. So they had, as you can see here in the upper right corner, a very, very small sort of patch of land, if you like, that we could fit a pitch into. To the bottom right, you can maybe see in that photo a block of asphalt. So they still had some asphalt left. But this used to be a grass area on a bit of a slope, so it wasn't great for anything particularly. And so what we did here within the constraints, if you like, of the site was fit a just about a half-sized hockey pitch in. So it gave the school a wide range of flexibility to offer the key sport of hockey, but also they had links with a local football club. So it's used in the evening for football. And they also, as you can see here, use it for tennis as well. So this is too small to fit an athletics track on or anything like that. It's 61 meters by 43 meters, so just under half of hockey pitch. But it's allowed them to offer their children at the school a much wider range of sports to a good high level as well. What you can also see here is an example of what we have to do from a design point of view, where we're working within a very tight space. That white building on the upper right photo is actually somebody's house. So we had to use retractable lighting so that the lights go up and then come down again when they're not in use, just because the residents needed their quality of life protecting. So you might have an area of land that could fit a facility like this in. You've then got to consider the impact on the surrounding areas as well as for yourself if you're in the processes of developing a project. But it's a good example of how you can achieve a project even in a very tight area close to houses. So there were a couple of examples of smaller facilities. This is an example of a full-size pitch. So we've seen one facility, which was the first one that was overlaying an existing asphalt tarmac court. The second one was built new on a natural grass area previously. This pitch is new build as well. It's a full-sized hockey pitch, and we provided new car parking to go alongside it as well, which is all part of the sustainability strategy, so that it was not just a pitch in a field. We also obviously created space for people to park and use the pitch correctly, access and egress it correctly. And this pitch is a Gen 2 pitch, so it complies for hockey, tennis and netball again, those three core sports. The school will actually use it for a bit of athletics, a bit of football. They use it for outdoor classes and all sorts, but the key sport was hockey. They've linked with hockey clubs, so the school use it during the day and hockey clubs come in through the evening. And this is a sand dressed pitch, so the main photo shows the pitch very close to handover when the sand was still visible. The bottom right photo was taken, I took that one I think, a couple of weeks ago when we returned to have a look at it, and the sand's completely bedded in, which makes it really pleasing to the eye. And also for the key sports, it's exactly what you need from a multi-sport facility. So we can develop full-size pitches where competitive hockey can be played, but still offer that wider range of facilities. And this sort of pitch footprint is an illustration of how you can do that. And then this is an example. I said that there was new base innovation coming through. This is an example of a base system that we call Shockwave. So it's a system that NottsSports invented originally to go under, dare I say it, 3G pitches, but we've re-engineered it for hockey. And what it does is reduce the need for a brand new 300 mil 12-inch stone base with tarmac or asphalt over the top of it. We can get rid of the asphalt, we can get rid of half the stone and build on 150 mil, which is circa 6 inches of stone. And we can put the shockwave product directly on the top of that. Excuse me, I've got a tickle in my throat. So, so what this meant for this school was that they could reduce the cost of the project by getting rid of the asphalt and half the stone. And that shockwave tile also provides not just the replacement for the asphalt and stone, but also the replacement performance of a shock pad. So it's a combined upper base and shock pad as one layer, and it's a 40 mil thick tile. I won't do too much of a sales pitch on it, but obviously you can get in contact with NottsSports or visit our website if you want to learn more about it. But what it means is that we're using half the amount of quarried stone, so there's less impact on the environment. There's less vehicle movements because we don't need to bring in on lorries lots of different stone and asphalt. There's less CO2 emissions as a result of that. It's a faster installation, and it can provide a pitch system that's compliant for that wide range of sporting provision within a school. So we've got the hockey performance, we've got the tennis, we've got the netball that we keep referring to, and they use it for break times, they use it at lunch times for football as well. So this is a Gen 2 Hockey 5s pitch built with one of these new base innovation systems. This one in particular, an example of what we've done at NottsSports, but there's others on the market as well. And over the next 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, there's going to be more and more innovation in how you can construct a pitch. But this was installed in 2019, I believe, and it's been so successful that the trust that owns this particular school, they own other schools in their area of England, in the east of the country, and they're putting in exactly the same pitch in at Fakenham High School, which is about 20 miles away, I think, from this site, because this has been so successful. It's got people playing hockey, and it gives the school a way of providing a wide range of sports for sports lessons. So they're doing exactly the same at another school, and now they've also got plans to build a full-size pitch at another of their schools, because hockey is being played on smaller areas, more people are playing, the local teams are getting more participation coming through, and now there's a demand growing for a full-size pitch. So that will probably happen in 2024, probably, maybe 2025, depending. But the trust are committed to delivering these multi-use facilities, starting small to grow large as the demand for different sports, in this case hockey, develops. And then finally, this is a resurface of an existing pitch. So it was an old hockey pitch, sand filled. For those of you who know what that means, that's a old pitch system, still can be used. In fact, there's 2 pitches here. There's one at Kent College in the southeast of England and one at Wickham High School. And the one at Wickham High School is interesting because they've got every pitch marking known to man put on there. They've got the tennis, they've got the netball, they've got the hockey, they've got lacrosse. They also put football on there and athletics. And what they do is use different types of line markings to apply them at different types of the year. So this particular drone photo was taken with all the markings on there, but at other times there won't be tennis, there won't be netball, for example. So it's an illustration of exactly how schools can use lots of markings to provide lots of benefit to their students while still having hockey as the core sport. And then at Kent College, you can see there the curve, which is, I'm sure you're ahead of me on this one, but you can see that's an example of how a 200-meter running track is marked out. So again, that school will have their athletics lessons on the pitch in the summer when the hockey season's finished, and then they can use it for athletics for lessons. And I think many schools use it for their sports days because being hockey surface, it's more usable in wet conditions than if they were trying to do their sports day or athletics day on a natural grass pitch. Depending on where you are in the country, you might not need to worry about the weather so much, but yeah, in England, it's always a consideration. So I gave those example layouts a few slides ago, and then we've gone through some of the sites that actually deliver on these range of facilities. And so examples of best practice. So we've seen some of the sites. How do they actually use it? So what they've done is, going back to that project cycle, at the development stage, at the design stage, they've consulted with their local community, their sports teams, their municipalities to understand if there's a demand for a range of sports in their area, which would then lead that particular customer to consider a multi-use facility. So if you know you just need a hockey pitch, and hockey will be the user 90% plus of the time, perhaps a multi-use facility isn't really viable. But more often than not, even in an area that's popular for hockey, there'll still be demand for other facilities, and therefore that engagement with the local community is important. And those stakeholders can provide access to a range of sports that might support your pitch plan for a hockey pitch. There's companies like us in your territories. There's contacts at the FIH like Andre, Mike and Alistair that can also help with guiding you to contacts for people, designers, consultants for different layout options and design solutions, whether they be innovative ones that are coming onto the market. You can ask them what's available, what they've seen, or you can speak to commercial companies like us that are working with customers all the time. Where different sports can support the plan, then hockey is still the priority, but those other sports, your tennis, your football, maybe even rugby training, can fill the gaps in the schedule to make a plan sustainable and to justify the investment at a school or at a municipality, where perhaps hockey on its own might not have enough of a demand to justify the investment. So if more sports benefit, there should be a stronger argument for a development of a facility. To use that hockey sport as the driver, and that will encourage and support the development through design stages all the way through to completion, hopefully. And then, as we discussed in April, your choice here and now as you develop the project will inform how the pitch can be used all the way through the life of the pitch. And at resurface point in maybe 10, 12, 15 years time, what the resurface options are at that point. I mentioned about line markings. So great, we can put all these markings on there, but how do you do it without compromising the surface? Because what you don't want to do is cut in, if you want to use that phrase, or permanently cut in every single line that you saw on some of the photos and examples that we've just ran through. So what all those customers did was work with us as a company and the contractors that install to come up with the plan of how they apply those pitch markings. And basically there's two options. We would recommend 2 colours are cut in as a maximum. So if we go back maybe to this slide, hopefully that comes straight up. So you can see here that the yellow markings and the white markings are in there, cut in permanently. So those are the 2 colours the school chose because hockey and tennis were the 2 sports that were going to be used the most. The other sports that are marked out there, netball and football, what they are is marked out with paints. So again, I'll just flip back through to Kent College and Wickham. So Kent College, you can see the white markings for the athletics track, they're painted on because athletics is only going to be a 3-month window for the school. They don't use athletics or teach athletics in the winter. It's a summer sport, so they only need the markings to last 3 months. Wickham High School, similar. The big bright white lines for hockey, they're in there, they're permanent, they never have to be remarked, they're in the surface. But the other sports, even lacrosse, are painted on. So that what we don't do is have lots of cuts into a brand new, beautiful hockey surface and creating lots of different seams and joints that are a risk of failure in years to come. So what we try to do, again, from a design, from a sustainability point of view, as the final point on this slide shows, is use a mix of put-in permanent lines that are installed at the point the surfaces are laid, and then apply painted markings in two different ways. This what's called semi-permanent paints that can last a year or more. So maybe that is a sport that's going to be used all the way through the year, like football or maybe lacrosse. And then there's more traditional line marking paints that will last 3, 4, 6 weeks, depending on what the conditions are like when they're painted, for your seasonal sports. So you've got tennis, athletics, as I mentioned. So you can apply one set of sports one year, and then if the lacrosse demand goes away the following year, you just don't mark it again. So there's different paints for different lengths of time. And again, working with specialists, they can guide you as to what the right layout is. And then where you've got a range of sports playing on a facility and you're the driver as the hockey association, or you're working with a club to deliver a project, obviously hockey's the priority. So therefore you need agreements in place for the different sports that are also going to play on there, so that they sign up to what you want them to do. So perhaps don't dictate to them, as bluntly as I've just described. Engage with them, find out when they want to use the pitch, what are they going to do in terms of offering management support or maintenance support, and what condition do they have to leave the pitch in when their session ends. So do they have to move their goals out the way so you can play hockey immediately? There's all different elements to a user agreement, but it makes people think about, okay, I'm a football club coming onto a hockey pitch. I've agreed to do this, that, and the other, and I don't just turn up, play football, walk off, and not worry about the facility and who's going to use it next. So those user agreements are really important. I'd recommend considering those as you engage with the different sports. And as we've said, once the pitch is built, you can promote hockey to those other users. So you can do hockey open sessions for footballers or tennis players or whatever it may be, because you're wanting as many people to play hockey as possible. And if they're using the site for another sport, it shouldn't be a massive leap for them to see hockey as a sport they might want to try. And that all drives participation. As I've mentioned, you can modify the line markings. So if you have tennis suddenly come on the scene 2 years into your pitch life, then you could, if you've future-proofed your design, introduce tennis markings to provide an option for that club or demand as the facility develops. All parties need to accept and understand the maintenance costs, because if you're going to apply line markings for a sport, we just said tennis, so let's continue with that. Who's going to pay for the line markings for tennis? Is it the club that's going to come and play tennis, or is it you as the pitch provider? So that needs considering, and that would come in as part of your user agreement that you sign, or they sign with you. And then also we see this quite a bit actually, where customers that are looking to get as much usage on the pitches as they can, being flexible and always looking and managing the facility so that you can be flexible for new sports, or if some sports have signed up to something and they're not delivering their agreed outcomes, then you can take an approach with them. And particularly if hockey's growing, maybe you need more access to the pitch than you originally thought. So again, all these things need considering as you develop the project right from the outset. So that's it really. We've tried to give you an illustration of what customers here in mainland England and Scotland and Wales and elsewhere in Europe, in fans, are doing in terms of providing multi-use facilities. We've said it needs to come and be considered from an early stage. It's very difficult to build a hockey pitch and then suddenly think, maybe I do want to offer soccer, or maybe I do want to offer tennis. Because if you build a dedicated hockey pitch, it might be, but it might not be possible to suddenly change the way it's being used to support a level of tennis or another sport after the event. So doing your early engagement, if you think a multi-use facility is an option, is critical, because that will inform how you design the pitch, it'll inform how you mark the pitch, and it'll inform how the pitch is used from the moment it's finished. So yeah, hopefully that was of interest and use, and I'll let Andre take the floor again, and I'll field any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Duncan. It was great. I would like to pick on a comment that was made in the chat by Walter Bosmans from Switzerland, and open the floor to everyone attending this meeting. And the comment that Walter did was that in Switzerland, the hockey is played a lot on football 3G pitches, and cooperation is far from ideal. So I would certainly like to hear you, Duncan, on your experience on this pitch sharing situation. But before I do that, I would like to invite everyone attending to put your comment on the chat, or raise your hand, so that we invite you. We can invite you to share your comment. So first, I would hand it to Duncan, and then please, if you have a comment, raise your hand, or write in the chat, and then once it is your turn, we will invite you to speak and share your comment with everyone. Duncan?
Yeah, thanks, Andre. So I'm just reading it now. So we see it a lot. I know it happens quite a bit in America as well, where soccer pitches are used for hockey as well. And I think, as Alistair's put in response, the surface is not going to be ideal for hockey if it's a football pitch, I should say. So I guess this goes back to a little bit of what I was getting at. I think a lot of customers are surprised that a hockey pitch can be used for a wide range of activities. So if you've got an existing football pitch, perhaps the decision has been made, and it's very difficult to then suddenly say, well, actually, we'll put a hockey surface down, and then you can still do your football, but because obviously the football surface is there. What we've done with a lot of customers is an education piece, and say, right, okay. In fact, we've had, I think, 3 customers this year come to us and say, we want to do a 3G soccer surface. That's what we want to do. And then when we've sat with them and said, well, actually, you also want to do other sports on it, so is a 3G surface ideal for you? They've then reconsidered their position, and they've actually ended up doing a design similar to what we've seen on the photos here. So what you can't do on a hockey pitch is play FIFA quality compliant soccer. So that's the trade-off. But more often than not, here in the UK, pitches are used by clubs for training, coaching and practice, which you can do on a hockey pitch. So I don't know the club in Switzerland or the clubs that you're talking about necessarily, but if there was an opportunity moving forward to say to them, okay, you need 90% of your soccer fields to remain soccer specific, we accept that, but maybe there's 4 or 5 or whatever the number will be that could be more practice facilities where hockey could be better supported with the type of pitch design that we've done. So yeah, you're right. I can imagine it's not a real cooperation, and I'm sure Alistair's got a lot of experience of this, and I'll let him talk about the proposed EU ban rather than me walking into a situation on that. But yeah, I think it's educating customers and facility owners to understand that you can play football on a hockey pitch if it's designed in a certain way, rather than having to try and cram hockey onto a surface that it doesn't support.
So before bringing Alistair in, what I understand from your reply is that in fact, because okay, let me just for clarification purposes, the situation in many countries is that the 3G pitch is already there, and then the question becomes, oh, can this grassroots hockey club use it? Now,
Yeah,
what I understand from your reply is that yes, but ideally, this type of surface is more adequate to football, and therefore hockey would not take a lot of benefit from it. So there's not much we can do once the surface is there. What there is if the surface is not there yet, we can then try to let's say encourage NAs to think of other more efficient types of surfaces.
exactly. Yeah. And,
Okay.
and the key word is compromise. At some point, somebody will have to compromise. Hopefully, things moving forward, hockey will, and the NAs on the call will have conversations that mean football compromises more so than probably what's happening historically and to date, where hockey has compromised playing on 3G. But there's always going to be a place for 3G, and we're not saying there isn't. But when you speak to particular schools here in the UK, they start seeing the benefit of a multi-use facility rather than just a 3G facility.
Thank you so much, Duncan. Alistair, please.
Hi, Andre. Good morning, everybody. Just really to expand a little bit on what Duncan's already said. It is ultimately always a compromise. Football wants to play on surfaces that replicate good quality natural grass. Hockey moved away from playing on grass 30 plus years ago. And that's the fundamental difference. There are ongoing discussions with FIFA and with World Rugby, so the three sports working closely together to try and introduce a new category, which is effectively an inferior quality football surface, but maybe better for hockey. Simplistically, football wants the surface to be slow. They don't want the ball to roll too far. They have a big ball, etc., etc. We have a small ball that we want to travel quickly. There are diametrically differing requirements for the two sports, and it is a balance. And I think if you go to the Gen 2 type surfaces, which Duncan's referred to today, from a football point of view, they would be very fast. And okay, that's great for training, for small-sided football, cross-pitch football, etc., etc. But for 11-a-side, yeah, that's what football was using in the 1990s and decided was unacceptable at the higher levels of the sport. So it really is a question of when you start getting into higher levels of competition, the compromise becomes increasingly difficult. But at that very low level, grassroots level, yeah, maybe people could be a little more pragmatic, but the reality is more people want to play football than hockey, unfortunately. So football has more money. I mean, that's a clear driver in many markets, being pragmatic, but we are hopeful that we can improve the situation a little bit. And as I said in the comment to Walter, the fact that the EU are going to ban some of the materials used in the current football surfaces from an environmental point of view might give hockey an opportunity to encourage the industry to develop surfaces that are a little more balanced. Yeah, I think at the moment you would say a football surface, hockey surface is probably 80-20 in favour of football. If we could get it to 60-40, I think we'd be doing pretty well.
I would like to just put on another topic on the table, which is normally a very sensitive topic to NAs, to schools, or to municipalities, which are, let's say, our most frequent pitch owners or facility owners. What would be so from from a grassroots point of view, obviously the hockey wants to lobby for the best surface possible, but in a lot of countries, it's just trying to lobby for a surface. It's not trying to lobby for the best surface, it's trying to lobby for a surface. What are the biggest advantages that a hockey club or a small NA or can present to a municipality, to a government, to a school, to try to convince her to install a multi-surface pitch? And I'm thinking not just in terms of overall cost, if there is any advantage, and I'm thinking, for instance, from a municipality where the political aspect of that decision is important. They want to please the biggest number of people, obviously, but the municipality needs to think about, okay, am I paying extra if I'm putting a multi-surface facility or not? And will the maintenance costs be higher in the long term or not? If the answer is no, it's actually cheaper, then sure, why not please more sports and a few sports? Could you tell us a bit more on that and your experience regarding this ability of sports like hockey to lobby for multi-sports in favor of bigger sports, let's say?
You want me to go first, Alistair?
Up to you, Duncan.
I'll give my experience. Yeah, I don't know the costs of hockey pitches to 3Gs in Indonesia or territories all around the world. But here in England, the cost of a good quality 3G pitch is almost certainly, there are probably some exceptions somewhere, but almost certainly going to be more expensive than a good quality facility like we've just ran through there. Within England, there's the Football Association framework, and the facility costs there would be higher than for a full-size 3G compared to a full-size hockey pitch. Now, some of that is because a full-size football pitch is 7,500 square meters, and a full-size hockey pitch is 6,200 square meters or thereabouts. So there's a scale element to it as well. I think what we see is, so that's cost. So you can certainly say relative, it's a cheaper installation. The new build, this is, by the way. The next thing in terms of how municipalities can demonstrate, the value of their investment, I suppose, is what we've run through up to a point. If it's designed in ways that can provide access to different sports, where soccer doesn't get completely kicked out, Alistair's right, there's compromise that has to be made, then there should be a wider range within that municipality of people that can access the facility, because it could support soccer, hockey, tennis, athletics, whatever it may be, lacrosse. On a 3G, then by and large, it's a football surface, maybe with some rugby. Again, I don't know how far rugby translates, depending on where you are in the world. But so that would be an obvious one. The capital costs are likely, certainly in our experience here in the UK, to be higher for a 3G, notwithstanding the scale difference. And then secondly, there should be more of a population accessing a pitch if there's more sports available on it. 3Gs are the football specific surfaces, are, as Alistair said, really designed for football. And then you might argue you can offer a level of other sport, but it's a difficult one. And I go back to the example I've given with schools this year in our market. And again, cards on the table, we do 3G surfaces. We're not anti-3G. We're not completely hockey. But when we have those conversations with schools and municipalities, and they realise that a football pitch is by and large for football, and there's very little else that you can offer in terms of additional sporting activity, it changes the perception of what that facility can deliver. So that would be my experience, and not always, but it means that a hockey type surface can be seen as a benefit to a wider range of people, and therefore people will engage with that.
What about the long run costs? Can you give us a bit of an idea on that?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the design, but a 3G surface, notwithstanding the changes that Alistair's mentioned with the rubber crumb being banned, but if we just talk about rubber crumb filled surfaces, then again, broadly speaking, they will require more maintenance than a type of pitch that we've run through here, a sand dressed or a Gen 2. So the life costs should more often, I'm trying to caveat it a bit because I'm sure there's some exceptions, but by and large, it should be more expensive to maintain a 3G. And also a 3G surface is likely to last on average 10 years, whereas a hockey type surface is likely to last 12, maybe 14 years plus, depending. So again, there's exceptions because the longevity of the pitch will depend on how you maintain it, the intensity of use on it, and how it's managed. So there's always exceptions, but broadly speaking, on average, that's what you'd expect. A 3G to cost more to maintain, have a 10-year life cycle before it needs resurfacing, and then also compared to a hockey pitch, which would last longer, require less maintenance, and almost certainly cost less.
Thank you. Alistair, do you want to add any on to this? You're muted. You're muted.
Thanks, Andre. Sorry, unfortunately, I'm going to slightly contradict Duncan now. My experience outside of the UK is that 3G pitches are cheaper than hockey fields, primarily because outside of the UK they don't use an asphalt layer on the football fields. So there's a $100,000 euro franc saving, and they quite often don't use an underlayer underneath the carpet, so there's a saving there as well. So I think each country you need to look at it. Certainly, I would agree in the UK that hockey is cheaper, but I think it's the unique way that the British contractors build football fields as opposed to the other way around, which is unfortunate. I think also it is reasonable to say that the football surfaces are also multi-sport. You can play football clearly, you can play rugby, the different codes of rugby, you can play NFL, American football, you can play. Certainly in men's lacrosse, seem to prefer the football surfaces. It's interesting in the US that if they're providing a lacrosse field for men, or it would be a 3G surface. If they're providing it for females, it tends to be a surface that is better for hockey. So there are distinctions within the sport. So I think we shouldn't just sort of put things into cubby holes and say 3G is only football. 3G can be multi-sport. It's a question of what sports you want to accommodate ultimately. And when we developed the 3G, sorry, the Gen 2 philosophy, it was to find sports that hockey could work with, because up until that point, people were perceiving a hockey surface to be exclusively for hockey. And if you've got a wet field, that is exclusively for hockey for sure. But some of the sand dress surfaces work equally well for other sports, as Duncan has mentioned.
I would like to clarify this situation, because we're having quite a diverse range of nations represented here. I've seen Indonesia, I've seen Netherlands, I've seen Trinidad, Australia. So what is the impact? What's the breakdown cost in terms of percentage of building this facility? So in the UK, what you've said, Alistair, and I believe you're in agreement on that one, is that the cost is lower than in other surfaces. Why is that? What is the difference in terms of why is there a difference, and where is the difference, so that the viewers can understand where exactly are the costs in building this facility?
60% plus the cost of a field is beneath the surface. It's the foundations, the drainage, etc. The tolerances that
Six
at least 60%, yeah. The tolerances that hockey needs for the smoothness of the surface are more demanding than football or rugby or other sports. You know, I go back to, we have a little ball traveling quickly across the surface. What you don't want are undulations in the surface causing the ball to bobble around or lift off the surface and strike a player, causing an injury. So building a hockey field requires a more sophisticated, more skillful method of construction than a football field.
Then my question would be, then why is there such a difference between outside the UK and in the UK? Because supposedly the pitch is the same, and supposedly they want to achieve the same pitch characteristics that you've just described.
The reason is relatively simple. The UK contractors are very risk averse, so they effectively build a base that is intended for hockey and then put a football surface on it. Outside of the UK, many countries, they have a more simplified method of base construction, which is cheaper for football.
I think as well, it depends on. So again, I'm not maybe I'm contradicting analysis. This is the point of all this. It comes down to a bit of subjectivity. So I think if the contractors are left to make the decision themselves as to how they build the pitch, which is often the way that contracts are let in England and maybe municipalities, it's what's called a design and build approach, where contractors are asked to design and provide a cost for the design and the construction of the pitch. They will take that, as Alistair says quite rightly, the risk-averse approach. Where there's companies like us, and there's others as well, leading the design element, then the contractors are, I wouldn't say open-minded, but they're willing and able to construct a pitch the same as they do in Europe or with different base designs. And I think the one thing that we're seeing is contractors now realising that they can't continue to keep building car parks with artificial grass over the top of them, which is opening the door to the type of product system that we saw at the old Buckingham site, which is the shockwave system we've developed. So if you have an opportunity to use some of the innovation coming on the market, and there's others out there, I think Tiger have got a good system as well here in England and into Europe, I believe, as well. There are ways that you can change the design from building asphalt and eliminate some of the base construction, which brings that 60% down. I don't know to what percentage, I have to do the analysis, but it's going to create a saving in the process. So the positive, I think, for everyone on the call is, for the first time, I've been doing this 20 years now, at the first time in, as far as I can remember, people are coming up with innovation in base constructions, and some of that will be available to you depending where you are in the world. But that is also forcing contractors, I suppose, in some ways, to be more open-minded about how they build a pitch, which should, over a period of time, mean that they get more comfortable building pitches in different ways. So from a hockey pitch point of view, certainly on the smaller size facilities, there's an acceptance that you don't need to build it with tarmac, and that will bring the cost down. Where you get to full-size pitches, and Alistair's right, with the strict tolerances for a competitive 11-on-11 hockey pitch, there's still a reluctance, I think, to do anything that's not been done before. So our job is to take the leap from doing a Gen 2 pitch, 2,500 square meters to 3,000 square meters with this new base system. In the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be doing a full-size pitch, and that's our challenge, and to work with contractors that will work with that design solution. So the benefit for everybody on the call is these things are happening, and there's going to be advantages and benefits cost-wise, design options-wise, that even if they're not cheaper in capital terms, should be more sustainable and should reduce the cost of resurface, for example, if everything works in the way we're expecting to do.
Okay, so I see this as it's one of those topics that probably you need to discuss on a case-by-case scenario. What I would like to take this chance is to bring in one of the participants, Kenny Carroll. Kenny, if you can if you turn on your video and if you can unmute yourself. Kenny has made a comment on the use of pitches that are also used by football, and I think his comment was quite well suited to address a previous comment from Wouter from Switzerland, which was about smaller clubs in smaller hockey clubs having struggling to basically use or to struggling to get access to pitches that are basically run by football. Kenny, the floor is yours.
I actually have a facial injury, so I'm not gonna go on.
No worries.
Okay. So, hello everyone. Yeah. So, I think because I made a comment there, and obviously in Ireland, obviously every country's different, but like most hockey clubs, their activity, 80-90% of the activity doesn't need a full size 11-a-side pitch because it's either training for adults or it's youth training, which is a large part of hockey clubs these days, or it's youth matches, which can be played in smaller pitches. So, going to get it into smaller clubs to persuade them to look at this, especially in places where you might have a small city or a big town where there might be one pitch and there might be a few clubs like in the suburbs that if they can develop in different parts of the city, that if they can develop their own smaller hub in their area, and then they can use a central venue for 11-a-side hockey. Like, it's a much better way of doing it, more sustainable, less travel. If they're in partnership with developing their own facility, they'll obviously have some sort of oversight of it and influence in it and control of it. And in Ireland, actually, we had, every country's different economic wise, but there would have been bigger grants available like 10, 15 years ago to sports clubs to develop facilities, whereas now the grants available are smaller. They're still available, but they're smaller in monetary terms. So how realistic is to a small club help developing a full-size hockey pitch? Probably unrealistic to some clubs. Whereas if they can access funding to develop a smaller pitch, it's just the way to do it. So that's what we're trying to encourage smaller clubs to do in certain places.
Sorry, now I was muted. Sorry, Kenny, from your comment, do I understand correctly that this is a policy that the NA is trying to enforce on their local clubs?
Well, not enforce, just to encourage, because some of them.
Sorry, encourage.
Some people.
My English was not good.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. As you can imagine, people are very enthusiastic and they think, why can't we develop? We're a new club or we're a small club. Why can't we develop like a full-size hockey pitch? And sometimes it's just not achievable. And instead of existing without a pitch and having to travel a distance to access a full-size pitch, or to use facilities that aren't optimal for training or whatever, 3G or whatever, then if they be more realistic and then develop in partnership with a school or council or with Gen 2, where you might share it with another club of a different sport, do you know what I mean? Tennis or football training in Ireland, for instance. And it's maybe then in 10 years' time they develop a full-size hockey pitch, do you know what I mean? Or 15 years' time, you know what I mean? But it's at the moment they're not ready for it, so that's what we're trying to encourage. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Sorry, just using a bit of trying to go a bit deeper into the situation that Wouter described. I would like to make use of both of your memories, Alistair and Duncan, in your experience with local clubs. what is there any case where or that you can present, share, either from a negative or positive case? I think what I'm trying to do here with this question is more to illustrate a situation, not so much to find a solution, because it seems solutions are very specific. But can you identify any case of smaller clubs accessing to other pitches that are not used mainly for hockey? Is there any case that you want to use as an example? Preferably if it's positive, but if it's not, it would be at least interesting to understand what are the barriers, what are the constraints, and what are the hurdles, so that people can then find solutions in their own countries.
Sure. So yeah, the experience here in the UK would be that football serves 3Gs with the rubber crumb, typically used for very basic hit and pass introductions to hockey. So within a school, it will be maybe not even with a full hockey ball, but more likely just hitting a ball across the surface, so people get the feel of a stick and the hit of a ball, and that is really where schools limit to. When I started 20 odd years ago, there was a few schools that would use versions of 3Gs that are now sort of outdated for a level of hockey. A lot of those had poor experiences, but that's England. Conversely, I know in America, a lot of hockey is played on 3G. So at this point, I'll pass to Alistair, who can give a wider world view of it. But here in the UK, that's what I was saying.
Thanks, Duncan. I think ultimately, Andre, the key thing is people have to be pragmatic. Don't be over ambitious in what you want to do initially. Too many people aspire to having a venue that will be suitable for top level hockey, when in reality there is probably not the demand for that at this point in time. So I think the approach that Kenny's taken in Ireland is really sensible. Start off a small facility. The smaller it is, the cheaper it is. Let's be fundamental. As Duncan said, a hockey field is smaller than the football field. A hockey fives facility is smaller than an 11-a-side hockey field. So maybe start with hockey fives, get the interest, get the demand, get the participation, then making the case for that investment in a full-size field becomes a lot easier. It's if you start out saying I want to spend the best part of €750,000 to $1 million on a field, and you've only got 200 players, you're probably never going to get there. If you start off with a facility that's going to cost a couple of $100,000, there's a reasonable chance you might get funding and support from municipalities or the regional government or what have you. It's, I say, it's encouraging people to be pragmatic in their expectations.
And I think there were some good examples that we gave within that. And I think just picking up on the point I made earlier as well, on the smaller size facilities, there's evidence in the ground that some of those base innovations that are available work over a period of time. So that can also be a way to reduce the capital costs, because as Alistair said, where 60% of the cost is in the base before you even look at the hockey surface and the other bits, then if we can reduce the cost of the base by using the innovation that exists and that will come through, then it makes everything even more affordable again. So those smaller footprints are definitely what we're seeing. And I don't want to ignore either the amount of asphalt overlays, if we call it that we're doing for schools who have got an area of tarmac or asphalt that's not being used or not of a quality. We can overlay that, because that's 60% of the base cost on a new build is already paid for. You've already got the asphalt there. So upgrading older facilities to provide smaller training pitches and hockey 5 pitches is a great way of doing it as well, because you're maximising the benefit of something that already exists.
So if I understand correct, if I could, let's say, try to summarize here, consolidate, when an NA or when a club has a 3G pitch as their only accessible surface, we don't say don't go there. We say, okay, there's limited practice that you can do here, and probably you might need to consider adapting your activity to that surface, and also and maybe decide which are the age groups that can take more benefit from that surface. But when you can do something in terms of influencing the building of a new surface, then there are, let's say, avenues of possibilities. I would say that the first one would need to be to consider what type of land is there, because from what you've just said, it's a big difference, not just in terms of cost, but also in terms of planning, whether you're laying a pitch on an existing asphalt surface, or whether you're laying a pitch on a surface that is just there and needs to be prepared. And then obviously the last point to consider would need to be, okay, so what is the best surface to put there? And I think that your presentation, Duncan, was quite comprehensive in that regard, in the sense that technology now offers quite a wide range of possibilities, not just in terms of the types of surface, but also to the types of markings. So there's not quite a few products available on the market. So my last point, and trying to close this discussion into and connecting to the initial point, is there any argument that hockey clubs and hockey institutions can make regarding the environment-friendly aspect of this new technology that you have shown, Duncan, that you, Alistair, might be aware of? Is there any case that hockey can make regarding, okay, you want to build a new facility, you want to lay out a new pitch. Look, these multi-surfaces are really good for the environment. They don't either because they use more ecological materials or recycled materials, either because they are easy to dispose. Could you try to bring a bit of light on that one?
Again, I can only give my experience here. I don't talk to end users outside of the UK per se, but here there are grants available to schools, for example, decarbonisation grants, environmental grants for projects where you can justify and demonstrate what you're doing is an improvement on or a benefit to the environment compared to another option. So there are customers that have secured grants here off the back of using base system innovation that reduces the impact on the environment. As an NA, you'd need to find out whether those sorts of things are available to you in your particular country and territory. What is, I think, reasonable is that as everybody moves towards a more sustainable view of the world, there'll be more grants of that type that come online, but whether they exist in Indonesia or elsewhere in the world, I wouldn't know. But that's the only, in terms of a practical benefit, then that would be what I'd say people are achieving here. What we are seeing over and over again from a customer point of view, whether that be a hockey club, whether that be a school or a college or a university, whoever it may be, is an increasing focus on wanting to have sustainable solutions at the heart of their design choice. So it's not a case these days that we're having to sell the idea of something sustainable. They're asking us what is sustainable. And again, that opens the opportunity from designs and innovation point of view.
Alistair, any comment on that?
Yeah, I think if I could just add to that, in terms of environmental sustainability, I think we need to be quite careful, because our experiences with the European Commission, and Europe is leading the environmental concerns around many aspects of sports provision. The regulators aren't that sophisticated. A synthetic turf pitch is a synthetic turf pitch, irrespective if it's hockey, football, rugby, tennis, whatever. And hockey is possibly going to get dragged into discussions that are primarily focusing on the types of surface we don't like, but it's all synthetic turf. And the regulators and the media don't want to distinguish, they're not bothered. So we need to be slightly careful there. I think the other key thing is sustainability, not just the environment, and maximising use is a very important part of sustainability. And building a dedicated hockey field, rugby field, football field doesn't necessarily make a sustainable case. We talked a lot about football today, but we shouldn't lose sight that structured 11-a-side sport or team sports are diminishing in popularity. It doesn't matter if it's hockey or football or rugby. Informal, casual sport is gaining in popularity around the world. And a really good example of that in the football world is futsal. Futsal is now growing more rapidly than football. Futsal would prefer to play on a short pile hockey type surface, not on a 3G long pile football surface. Futsal and hockey fives really go well together on the same facility. So again, I think we need to be tailoring it. Everybody has this vision of, I want a full-size field. Yes, when you get to that point in your development, that's great. But when you're starting out, I go back to what I said earlier, do you really need that full-size field as the starting point?
Yeah, and that's a very strong case, because in countries where football is even more dominant, and I'm thinking of, for instance, of my own country, Portugal, but I'm thinking also that it would apply to most Latin countries, not just in Europe, but also in South America. The argument for a good relationship between hockey and futsal could be a strong point to consider, precisely because of informal practice. And although in some countries where rain is quite frequent in the winter, especially, it tends to be played more in halls, which is why, and that's another part of the story, because indoor hockey suffers quite a lot from the pressure of futsal in halls. But anyway, that would be a different conversation. For the point of this discussion we had today, that's certainly an argument to consider. I know that in the audience there are people from countries where futsal is quite strong, so that would certainly be an argument to consider. We are way over time as usual. I just wanted to thank Duncan from once again joining us and sharing those great graphics and pictures and all these examples that serve as a reference point to all the people that are in our hockey community, because we really need to have these conversations and this information shared out. And Alistair is already doing quite a lot of his side with the quality program. But we think that it's also very important that these conversations reach the community and the grassroots, because that's where a lot of the decisions are made in many cases. So Duncan, once again, thank you so much for coming. We would want to thank everyone that came here today. I would want to remind you once again that this webinar has been recorded. So if you've missed it or if you came in late, because time zones are always tricky, and especially now since Europe has moved to daylight saving time a few weeks ago, you might have thought you might have missed the time zone there. So it's been recorded, and as with previous meetings, we will be posting it in the FIH Academy YouTube page, where, by the way, you can rewatch as many times as you want all the previous NA webinars. Once again, thank you very much for coming, and looking forward to see you on our next NA development webinar, wherever you happen to be. And again, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depends, and looking forward to see you in the future again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Duncan.